Ladies and gentlemen, let's game Telecom video. Let us discuss the new generation of hardware. Of course, this means the Xbox One, the PS4, and PC, and what exactly it's going to be doing for gaming. Freedom to think more openly is what the Division developers have stated, and they are, of course, Ubisoft massive. So the release of new hardware isn't just about shiny graphics, while many are focusing on the whole resolution gate scandal, which is somewhat dying down now. And of course the magical is it going to be 30 or is it going to be 60 FPS argument. Developers aren't just thinking of that. There are new game engines being produced, for example, Snowdrop engine, and we'll go into that in just a moment. And this will allow technology to be smarter. We'll go into that in a moment as well. Now, ultimately, the bottom line is developers have to make decisions during the process of the creation of their title. That's just how it goes. You can't just automatically aim for 1080p, 60 frames per second with super hyper, realistic graphics at 32 times anti-aliasing and have an open world environment and everything else at the same time, because there's obviously finite resources you have. Not only that, but of course there are finite development resources you've got. David Polford, from the Division's managing director at the Ubisoft Massive, has actually been discussing this, and he says, and I quote, "Before, no matter what we wanted to do, it was hard to do. You'd come to work with a great idea and we'd say, well, that's cool, but we have to be pragmatic. What are we really able to do?" And so they had to compromise to get things done. With this generation, you have crazy ideas in the morning, and we could see it up and running the next day. That puts people in different mindsets. They start thinking, how do we tell stories in games? Does it have to go the gameplay cutscene, or can we do it a different way? It's not so much the technology as the library the technology gives you. It's the freedom to think more openly about how you solve different issues. It's the same goes for studios. It's easy to see in advance with audio. All you need to do is be a very creative audio director who takes advantage of the fact there's very open landscapes of opportunities. End quote for now. So let's discuss this exactly, because it's somewhat of an interesting quote, but maybe a little bit confusing to some. Basically, this isn't just a statement about, okay, this GPU has X amount of T-flops and can, render it X resolution with this frame rate. Because ultimately, game development is not just focused upon that. It's also down to other things, and unfortunately, ease of development is one of the major concerns for the previous generation. It's no longer so much of a big deal because, well, the engines are so much easier to work on. The developer have also stated that the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are very similar, which makes multi-platform work less laborious. In fact, they're so similar that if you're generous, you could almost say that it is one project. Indeed, they said for the Division, they're not using 700 plus people to make a game, which in the game industry, for a lot of projects, the big AAAs anyway, is fairly standard. It's bloody expensive, and that's why games need to sell so sodding well to recoup the money. But meanwhile, the Division, it's still a high number, but it's actually slightly less than a third. They're doing it with 200. Now, don't get me wrong, if you were to compare that to a small indie developer, it seems absolutely gargantuan, because indie developers, in some cases, they're doing it with just 1, 2, 3 people. But for a big AAA title, that's pretty damn small. Another point that he's made is that when you think about the graphics, you can push more polygons, you can get better effects, but to me, it's also the opportunity to push the immersion and the narrative. When I saw a game announced at E3, I wasn't surprised that so many competitors went more for the tech demo stuff. It's the area where people who maybe not taking advantage of the machine and they have time and flexibility, it's a great opportunity to tell stories in a better and more creative, immersive, and create more immersive experience. And if we end quote for just a moment, this is one of the huge issues, because if we think about it, artificial intelligence, creating a more realistic world, better physics, all of these different points, they don't necessarily look great in a trailer, right? And unfortunately, that's what most people go from. You know, they'll put together a small snippet of a trailer, and then it will continue to evolve. And ultimately, we are getting to the point now where computing power on these next generation consoles, because they've got so much memory, they can start doing this stuff. They can, you know, make much more immersive worlds. For example, as I was saying earlier, The Division is utilizing what is known as the Snowdrop engine, and the Snowdrop engine is extremely powerful. The basic premise here is that you can actually modify the game on the fly. So for example, let's say you're an artist. Let's say that you're an artist and you are creating, say, textures for a rock, and you might snigger and you might say, well, you know, what's that? You're creating a rock texture. How hard can that be? Well, if you've ever looked at a game with really good outdoor textures, you'll notice that not all the rocks look the same. They have different levels of smoothness, for example, or different levels of erosion and damage, and say, is there moss growing on the side, and so on and so forth and so forth. And of course, this generation isn't just about having a clone brush of 1 trillion different rocks. It's about much more than that. And so diversity plays a huge part in it. So let's say that you want to draw focus. Let's say, for example, we're creating a game, an imaginary game, just for a moment. Let's say it's not The Division related. Let's just say it's, you know, let's say it's Cave Adventure 3000, right? And you want to go to various caves and you just want to explore them and maybe go spelunking, and you're, you know, also fighting monsters. Just whatever. And anyway, you know, you have various rocks around, of course, because you're, you know, exploring this foresty cave area. Well, imagine you don't want to see every rock looking the same. So as an artist, you would want to go in and maybe, oh, okay, we need to put a bit of, you know, damage on this rock, and okay, well, this one needs some moss because, you know, it's kind of wet in this area. Not this area though. This area gets a lot more sunlight, and, you know, maybe it's too harsh, maybe it's drier, so it doesn't really get so much say moss, or maybe whatever. You know, I'm not a hugely environmental type of guy. I don't know, you know, exactly what they would do to create the world, but you can get the general idea. Therefore, to be able to just simply go in, alter something on the fly, and see how it looks in real time is very important. And because these new game engines, they can be written and created and developed for machines which are x86/64, that means previewing them is a lot easier. Another example would be lighting. Lighting is an absolute bitch to do. You might not think it, because you might say, well, it's just a torch lighting, or it's just sunlight. How bloody hard is that? You know, just get the angle of the sun and, you know, Bob's your uncle. Unfortunately, Bob is not necessarily your uncle. He may well be your uncle twice removed. What I'm basically saying is that the family tree, in this case, would become very complicated very fast, because different levels of lighting, and it's not just a case of, well, we're going to go with this level of lighting, that's it. Because then you have to start taking into account different levels of surface reflectivity. You know, just how much light does a surface reflect? You might say, well, we're not, you know, dude, we're not in a, you know, glass house here, we're in a forest. How much bloody light can be reflected? Well, you're forgetting about little things such as, say, trees and different plants. For example, let's say they're a little bit moist. That means that a little bit of water is going to reflect, and even if not, plants do reflect some levels of light. I mean, look, you can see, you know, if you go out in your garden, especially if they've got, you know, relatively bushy leaves, you'll notice that, for example, or for you guys, you know, in the States, you'd probably say your yard, you would be able to see, you know, leaves have, like, you know, highlights on them and that type of thing. And it sounds really simple to just say, let's just create this environment, but it's not. Therefore, to be able to just go in and systematically say, okay, this is what's happening in real time, we can create this. This allows you to develop much more fluidly. And fluid development is going to become a huge thing, because it's actually going to help to lower games costs. or conversely create much more realistic environments. Believe me, if you're a programmer, you've ever developed a web page, you've done anything really boring, and it starts out to be fun at the first instance, and then 20 minutes later you're like, okay, well, this isn't quite as fun anymore. And then at the end, you're just basically ready for the asylum. For example, if you're good at Photoshop and you do masking, yeah, if you're ever masking hair and you're in an environment, you're in like a background area, and that, I'm talking like, you take a photo and you want to, say, put your friend on the beach somewhere, just for example, because he or she asks, and, they've got kind of wavy hair like I do, and you're trying to get that done really easily. You're going to be there for a while if that background happens to have quite a lot of the same colors or textures in the background as the person's hair. You're going to be basically fit for an asylum. You will pretty much be certifying yourself by the end of the process if you can't use some levels of, say, auto masking techniques. For example, using some alpha channels and so on. And they can only sometimes get you so far. My point being, before I got somewhat off track, is that if a tool isn't fun, and this is something they've said in their own blog, by the way, you can check this out at blog.ubisoft.com, or probably another way to do it would just be to Google the Division Snowdrop next-gen engine. You could also do that. But if you think about it, the more fun your job is, the more creative you're going to be, and that's another major key aspect for game development. Another point is that the game itself, the engine itself rather, is very fast, but not only that, it allows you to be able to alter something in, say, one area of the city or one area of the landscape, and that change will resonate through the entire engine. So if you happen to make changes to, say, the landscape, it won't be necessarily insular. These type of things are going to be instrumental in the next generation engine and the next generation systems. The Division has also, of course, been confirmed for the PC, which in my personal opinion is amazing, because I looked at it and I thought, wow, this actually could work extremely well for the PC. I was surprised. I was not surprised, shall I say, that it was eventually confirmed for it, because it just looks amazing. It's that simple. And these type of huge open worlds, I mean, the next generation of systems are going to go a long way to doing this, and I'm a graphics whore, right? That's one of the reasons I PC game. I'll just be blunt, I'll be honest. Sure, faster loading times are great. I do absolutely love user mods and so on, but I'm a graphics whore. I'd like to be able to just say, well, you know what, I want to run at 1080p at 60 frames per second and bugger everything else. Right? There are other benefits, of course, to PC gaming, but primarily for me, those are it. I do love hardware physics. I love it. I honestly do. Sure, many people will classify it as a cute little extra that doesn't really add that much to games, but to be honest, I really think it does. I think titles, for example, like Mirror's Edge, Batman Arkham, and so on, I think it really does benefit them. I actually am extremely excited to see what it does for Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I really wish that there was an ETA on the patch, may I add. But let's just be totally honest here. Larger open worlds, non-stupid AI, the type of AI where you just, when I do, like, my own type of Let's Plays or my own, just gaming, sometimes I'll reload a section, just if I'm playing by myself especially, I'll reload a section 2 or 3 times and I'll just do stupid things deliberately. Not necessarily for any other reason other than I just like to see how the game responds to things. I like to be like, okay, well, I know that I'm supposed to go forward in this section, and, I will eventually do it, but beforehand, I just want to see what happens if I just chill right here and just start shooting things. Just, can I snipe from a long range with a pistol? The game doesn't expect me to do it, but if it's fairly accurate, okay, I've got enough ammo, let me just see what happens. What about if I keep ducking up and down? Eventually, will I, get the enemy to do the same thing, and can I shoot them in the noggin? And so on and so on. And I think it's really cool to just see that, because if you've been playing video games for a while, you would have seen AI slowly start to evolve. Now, it's not necessarily just a simple case of, okay, we need more GPU power, or we need more CPU power to do this. It does come down to programming as well. We're starting to understand better how to emulate and to mimic real life, but we're nowhere near there yet. That's why that AI at the moment does have some predictability there. You can kind of see, okay, well, every several seconds they're going to stick their head up. It's becoming less so, right? AI is becoming more predictive. I mean, I remember, for example, Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Saturn. This is going back a little bit, of course. It actually had a limited ability to learn from you, and then what it would do, it would actually store some of that in user data. And I have told this story before, but, it's quite a while ago. And as it turns out, when I was playing this title, back when I was really good, well, I say really good, for, who I was playing against, the people I was playing against, I was really good. I knew, a lot of combos and stuff like that, which, considering I was pretty damn young at the time, I was pretty reasonable. And I basically trained up a couple of characters. Anyway, as it turns out, a couple of months passed, and I started to play other games like Fighters Megamix and Tekken, and eventually, just for like 6-7 months, whatever, I completely and utterly abandoned Virtua Fighter 2. Anyway, my friend, one of my closest friends, actually said, you know what, let's try it out. So anyway, he was like, okay, you know what, we're just bad at this game now. I think we're a bit rusty. Let's fight a couple of your CPU characters and just see how we do. So I was like, okay, cool. So he tried it, and I actually thought he was sandbagging when he said, Paul, this guy's kicking my ass, what's going on? And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. And anyway, I did a mirror match, and I was getting absolutely destroyed. And it was only, I'll be honest, there was only the combos and stuff he was doing were pretty good, and a lot of it was pretty awesome, but it had some sound tactical problems. For example, it really just couldn't really understand what to do against jump attacks and a few other bits and pieces, so that was how you got past it. It was just a simple case of, if you use a cheesy tactic, it didn't matter how many times you used that tactic, it literally couldn't understand it. Other problems as well, like certain timings of combos and stuff, it just couldn't understand. Others it would just execute after a couple of times. For example, if you were using counters, or you were using Akira's Stun Palm of Doom, it would understand that. But if you were to use something more convoluted and complicated, it couldn't really do that. And other AI has also started to evolve, of course. We've got this situation where that's starting to increase. Lighting is another thing that I mentioned earlier. Texture resolutions are starting to increase. Frame rate is still, not exactly where I'd like it, honestly. I'm kind of on John Carmack's side, and one of the reasons I do love PC gaming, as I said, is the 60 frames per second versus the 30. I'm not necessarily on the side of every game ever needs to be at 60. For example, Final Fantasy probably doesn't. On the other hand, Twitch-based shooters, yeah, I don't like 30. But I think the point being that with engines like this, with The Division, and Ubisoft as a whole, with the Snowdrop engines, and don't forget, we're going to be doing a lot more coverage on engines, actually. I have some plans over Christmas. It's been really chaotic for me the last couple of days. There's been a lot of stuff, a lot of shit that I've been wanting to do, but I haven't really had the chance. I could probably make several vlogs worth of reasons behind it, but unfortunately it's due to the recent changes on YouTube in terms of copyright. That's been a big problem. Also the last couple of days regarding my own personal work, like, the company I work for, been quite busy. A few other bits and bobs as well, so unfortunately some channel stuff's had to suffer, and I don't like that, I'll be honest. I hate not making great content for you guys. Not just because it loses views and sub rate, but it also makes me feel kind of guilty, because I've promised stuff to people and I hate not delivering on it. I really do, because it makes me feel like crap, because I'm one of those people where if I say I want to do something, I will do my best to do it. It's just been a simple case of I honestly haven't had time. but there is a lot of stuff that I'm going to be focused on over Christmas, and I want to start taking an in-depth look at the engines as well that are coming up, because honestly speaking, some of the stuff is extraordinarily exciting, and I don't just say that lightly. It really is going to be pretty damn epic. So, anyway, I think that's just about it on this little bit of a rant and tangent, and God knows what else you can call this video, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'll see you soon. Take care. Sorry for the squeak just then. This is my little chair. I'm still kind of breaking it in. But anyway, take care, and bye for now.